For John Steinbeck, the means of effecting positive, inclusive social change was literature.
His vivid characterizations of those in dire need and his poignant, empathetic evocation of their struggles, these undoubtedly played and still play a far greater role than he ever knew.
Steinbeck's work can only help in bringing about more fair and more just conditions in this nation that he both loved and endlessly challenged. Do better.
Well, good evening, and I just want to thank Megan, Paul, and Daryl for the performance tonight. It certainly was moving and gave us a lot to think about. As I said in the beginning, tonight's event was co-hosted by Safe and Sound, the Alma Center, and the Marquette Center for Peacemaking, three groups that have a long track record of working for a more equitable and just society. And we're grateful to have both Jomar and Terry, the leaders of the Alma Center and Safe and Sound, here with us today. And so to start off our Q&A is, I'm hoping that each of our panelists, we're all a pretty diverse group, performers, founder of a healing center, the executive of an organization focused on community safety and community organizing. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came together for this event and a little bit about what your organization is doing? And maybe we could jump in with you, Jomar.
Well, good afternoon, or good evening now. My name is Jomar Hooper. I'm the executive director of Safe and Sound. Excited to, have witnessed some great performances this afternoon and this evening, and, just some real timely work, to see it having taken place so many years ago and the being written so many years ago, but still have a lot of relevance to what we are going through. What we're seeing today is a testament to the strength of the author, and I really appreciate being able to be a part of this today. So as I mentioned, I'm the executive director of Safe and Sound. We're an organization in Milwaukee that works across sectors to build safe communities through community organizing, youth organizing, and partnerships with law enforcement and other community partnerships. Well, just a little bit about me personally. I was raised in Milwaukee, and I've been one of the biggest cheerleaders for Milwaukee for the longest. I've spent a lot of my career in public policy, and now to be able to lead an organization that's working directly to try to create safe opportunities for residents in multiple neighborhoods is such a blessing and such a great opportunity. So as you can imagine, it's been a rough week last week, and just trying to figure out how we as an organization can cope and get through and protect the safety of our staff, and also just how do we ensure that our residents are safe and that they have a space and opportunity to have their the desire for change heard.
Thanks, Jomar. That's great to hear, and certainly, the impact that you've made on Milwaukee has been profound even before Safe and Sound, and we're excited to see. In a minute, I want to get a little to some of the things you hinted at about how folks are responding to the current situation. But maybe we could hear from some of our performers. Daryl, do you want to jump in a little bit about how you came to this collaboration?
Hey, Daryl. Hey, Daryl, can you hear us? There he is.
Yes. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Daryl.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, job well done, guys. Can I just say what a challenge it was to try and bring yourself to perform during this week and in our current atmosphere. I love what I do, but this was especially challenging, and I'm just very, very happy to have been a part of it. Thank you all for welcoming me, and I appreciate the effort, and I think it was monumental how you were able to integrate it in such a seamless fashion, and thank you again.
Oh, our absolute pleasure, Daryl. And for other people, I've known Daryl for a long time. We've worked together on different performance projects, but I don't think I reached out to you until, was it Tuesday? To ask if you wanted to.
Tuesday.
Yeah. So he didn't have much time to please get off the book. block it, tape it, and then Keith Emerald and I work on it today on a technical level. But, you know, Daryl, and to everyone, when Megan and I started planning this a couple months ago, when Peacemaking approached me and said, "Hey, could you reprise but
you know,
online because we're looking for
I also,
the backdrop was the pandemic, and that's still the backdrop, but there's this other huge backdrop too now that, you know, was there before, but had not been laid bare before in the way that it was 11 days ago. So we kind of looked at each other a week ago and said,
By Zoom.
right, by Zoom, and said, I'm not sure this program is quite up to the moment right now. I mean, we do finally get around to race at the very end with Travels with Charlie, but shouldn't it be at the beginning and the end? And there was Crooks just waiting for me in those pages, and I knew instantly who needed to play that role if he so desired, and I knew you'd kill it, man, and thank you. And just the weirdness of, you take this thing, you send it to us, Keith and I, we did a fade out, fade in, and when we done that, it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds on the dot.
Yeah. Well, and Paul and Daryl, you both did a great job.
but you
and
know
I
what
think
that is, Paul?
What is it, Daryl? What is it?
That
It's what? Say again, please.
I was going to say that's God in action.
Yeah. It's kind of a
That
pure
is
moment.
God in action.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem to,
The whole
divine,
creative aspect.
yeah.
Yeah, like Paul mentioned, he was approached to reprise the Steinbeck show, and he'd actually talked about the show to me, I don't know, sometime in our 4-year collaboration about turning it into a 2-person performance, and it was just the perfect time. It was definitely a challenge to try and figure out how to do this in the current situation of not being able to do it in person with each other, except we are now, not wearing masks, but we're, I know. Yeah, we've been collaborating for several years now, and I'm always happy to jump on whatever Paul has in mind, honestly.
God help you.
It's always fascinating for me to learn. I mean, I read Of Mice and Men in high school, but I was not very familiar with much of his other work. I know of it, but had never had a chance to read it or let alone perform it. So I was very happy to be asked to be a part of this.
Something tells me you might track some of it down now.
I think so.
Carrie? Hi, Carrie.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for that really beautiful and powerful performance, Megan, Paul, and Daryl Allen Reed. What a great addition to bring in. I'm the founder and executive director of the Alma Center, and our mission is working with men involved in the criminal justice system. We work on actually reconnecting men to the truth of who they are, understanding and exploring what happened to people, not what's wrong with them or what they did in our community, but really what happened that has people responding in a way that is passing on pain to other people and to other community in our lives. I mean, to other community and other people in their lives. Certainly this week has laid bare the truth of what happens to people. It's not just about what happens in people's individual lives, but it's about what's happened to people generationally, historically, and culturally in this country. And what happens in people's lives adds to that. So our work is really about supporting people, supporting men in a journey of healing and reconnecting back to the truth of who they are. We primarily work with African-American men. Our staff is primarily African-American men, and I wish they were the people here, but they are actually probably out a few blocks away from me right now in the demonstration that's going on in our city. It's interesting to me that we began, I mean, interesting is not the right word, right? It's, I don't know what the right word is, but when we put this together, we were really thinking about the pandemic and thinking how people needed to have a chance to just like get away from the isolation that was going on in home and actually just reconnect with creativity and reconnect with joy, although Steinbeck, I don't know about all the joy that's in there, but it was really powerful to think about how what resonated with me tonight was the themes of what happens to people, how it continues to play out in their life and to overlay their lives, and how the creative arts have really helped us, all of us, have empathy and understanding and compassion for that, and what a great soothe it is to soul right now to connect with creativity. And it's not just a soothe to soul, because that's not what we need. We need that, but we also need a call to action, and both of those things were very powerful tonight.
So it looks like we got 2 questions here. I want to read the first one from an audience member, and maybe each of our panelists could think about it for a minute, and then I'll read the second one that I think we could answer first, which is really geared more for the community partners. So the question for everyone, that if you could just take a moment to think about, it's what's the best way for folks to collectively act and bring about permanent change, especially in terms of when individually people should recognize when is it a time to listen and follow, and then also to discern when is it a time to speak up. And the individual who asked that really wanted to say thank you for the performance tonight. And so while folks think about that, maybe Terry, we could start with you with this other question, and it deals with folks who are grappling with the racially motivated violence, the pandemic, the inequities facing our community, city, and country. How exactly is your organization responding? And are there any specific strategies that you'd like to share with the group? So sort of 2 related questions. Maybe we'll start with you, Terry, go to Jomar, and then come back to that other question.
I think one very, very important strategy right now is to follow the leadership of African-American people in our community. And there's been I think I'll try to post it to the chat box if I can, or maybe there's some way that we can get it out, because there's been a platform of what our community and how our community needs to respond. And to me, that's the leadership that I'm following right now. Okay, where do we fit into that platform? What do we do internally? This is the work that we've been doing since our founding. Before, it seems like this needs to be the purpose of why we're here, in my opinion. We have a whole history that we need to understand, that we need to tell the truth about, and that we need to heal from. And that really needs to be our work. I think there are different paths that happen right now. Is that one of the things that we're doing internally is the book Me and White Supremacy is a required workbook now for all of our white staff, so that we can really continue to deepen our journey with each other and hold each other accountable for the work that we're doing. Our work for the men that come to our programming has been to hold space for them right now. That is our work. That is our job, is to give people the opportunity and the space to release. And then it is also our job to become involved, to continue to engage in the movement for change. And that can be in whatever forum is the one that finds our voice. It might be in marching on the street. It might be in working with the police, with the DA, wherever we have access. It's like, it's always been our job, but it's just like, that is what we're here to do. Like that, we have to be, to me, we have to be the people that heal this. It's not a sustainable model going forward, and that's really clear. This whole combination of everything seems like the portal for us to step in to do that work at a deeper level.
Yeah, lots of good points. And what about you, Jomar? What about Safe and Sound institutionally? What sort of responses are taking place?
Yeah, I would definitely echo a lot of the sentiments that Terry just spoke on. In particularly, I think, I'm leaning heavily these days on the phrase that silence is complicity. So I think it's important for organizations like Safe and Sound and leaders like myself to be able to lend our voice to this. I could be working behind the scenes trying to get things done, but I think at this point in time, it's our staff and our residents need us to be visible and need us to specifically call out what the injustices are in no uncertain terms, just so that we're all on the same page and that we all can move forward with a shared understanding of what is happening and what needs to be changed on an institutional level. That's been one of the things that we've really been grappling with and trying to work towards this week. And I know Terry mentioned, staying in our lane has really been important for us as an organization as we move forward with this. There's some great, amazing young people out on the front lines doing their thing, leading this work right now. And that's in Safe and Sound. That's not our call right now. Our call is to make sure our residents are safe. We've been really providing a safe space for our residents to have a virtual environment where they can get together and talk about things that are going on within the community. One particular thing I want to highlight is 3 times a week we have youth engagement virtual plugins where we have youth and members from the community have a safe space, just an hour where we can talk about whatever is going on with these youth. We can learn what's going on with them, what they're seeing, and plus we can learn from them as far as what they need, what they want, and how we can better support them as they're seeing these injustices in our community. And I also think too, as organizations that have power and connections, it's incumbent upon us to use those connections, whether that's, talking with the mayor's office, talking with our partners in MPD, talking with other folks and other community groups, because I think we're past the point of, just playing around the edges now when it comes to getting things done. I think nothing less than deep systematic change in these institutions will be accepted at this point in time. So I think it's incumbent upon us, and definitely at Safe and Sound, we're really ringing the bell, just to see how we can get things done within this community on a deep, systematic level, working with our partners and using the space that we have been granted and staying in our lane at the same time.
Yeah, well, I appreciate both comments. And one of the things I've admired about both organizations, and I think as a society, is on the one hand, you're helping people be strong and tenacious, but also it sounds like at the same time creating space for people to find a little comfort and support and healing. And, that's a dual role. And it leads really into the other question from one of the audience members. And maybe we can go to Megan and Paul to jump into this. And it's a question that I know we're facing from a lot of the students is, when do you listen and follow? When do you speak up? When do you act as an individual? And when do you act as a collective? As artists, as well as folks who've delved into Steinbeck, how would you respond? And I don't know, Megan, if you want to jump in, and then Paul.
And then you, Daryl. Yeah, go ahead.
I think white people need to listen, and that will give them an education into what they have been doing, and then educate themselves with resources that I'm seeing shared all over social media, Instagram and Facebook. People are just giving lists of this is what you need to read, white people. This is what you need to watch. We've been talking about this for decades, and this is all the material you need to understand why this is all happening, and the atrocities that just have changed over time, but they've never really gone away. And I also agree that it's so important to take action. Silence does no good, and I have seen so many different people in my life. I've lived in Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. I went to college in Milwaukee. I graduated from UW Milwaukee. I also lived in northern Wisconsin, and that part of the country, that part of the state is like another world. It's just baffling. And as someone that comes from a background, my grandmother is actually African American and Native American and white. So I grew up knowing all about this stuff, and I feel like a covert person, operative, undercover, exactly. Listening to the way white people talk, and I'm no, you cannot say that. You don't understand. So this revolution that's happening right now is so exciting, and so I just feel like people's hearts are opening up so widely, and I just hope it continues and that people keep listening. and need to keep listening to our African American brothers and sisters and hear exactly what they've been trying to tell us for generations.
I didn't know how I was going to answer until I heard Megan, and it all came together. Because there's listening, there's saying, and there's doing. And I think you're right. White people need to stop saying and do a combination of listening and doing. Listening to get the perspective and understanding that we don't have or don't have enough of, and then acting upon it, commensurate with what we're being told needs to happen. Dr. King said, evil occurs when good people do nothing. Good people say nothing. That's enabling, is what that is. And Mandela said that it's not just the oppressed, but equally the oppressor who needs to be liberated, because the act of oppressing is an oppression, is an imprisonment, is a confinement, is a destruction of the spirit. The last thing I'd say on this, and I'm speaking just for myself here, because I can get pretty political at times, maybe the indication that it's time to actually do, to step forward, as so many people are doing, is when the leadership at the top level alternates between atrocious and absent. It can't get any worse. I'm 58. I've seen some bad presidents and some good ones. A really good one, the best one of my life, very recently. I've never seen anything. This is not a quantitative difference. This is a qualitative difference. This is, I say, arguably the worst human being on the face of the earth, functionally, in terms of its impact on the planet and on the people. And we just have to stop mincing words about the terrible, terrible person that is calling the shots. Daryl, you want to say something?
Daryl, yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this, about when to listen, when to act, when to talk.
I know it's hard to hear me. I've just got a phone and I'm outside and I'm technically challenged, but all I want to say is the difference being made, I hope that everyone sees, is the involvement of white people actively has made a significant difference and will continue to make a positive change that we will all see historically.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we have a question for Jomar and Terry, asking, this must be from folks down to our neighbors to the south, are there equivalent organizations to yours with whom you work in Chicago?
I'm new to Safe and Sound, so I'm not too familiar if we have any connections with any peer organizations in Chicago at this point in time. I know we work a lot with drug prevention organizations throughout the Midwest, so I'm sure that there's some equivalent organizations that are doing some great things similar to Safe and Sound within the Chicago region.
Ditto. I don't have an exact. I don't have an exact organization.
Well, Megan and I have a lot of involvement in Chicago. In fact, we're there now. Yeah.
And are there 2 or 3 organizations that you'd say are equivalent to Safe and Sound or the Alma Center, Paul or Megan?
Well, I'll throw it back to you, Pat, because I know the Center for Peacemaking, which you have not spoken of enough because you're being gracious and shining the light on Jomar and Terry and the great work that they're doing. You have involvement in Chicago. Do you want to talk about that and about more generally what the center is doing?
Sure. Well, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And, as a moderator, I do think, and what's neat is, the center, through our Near West Side work, we've collaborated with Safe and Sound, and certainly Terry, we've collaborated with you over the years. Just in a nutshell, what the center strives to do is 2 things. One is form the next generation of peacemakers. So we're educating kids. I shouldn't say kids, young adults who come to Marquette. We're trying to give them the skills, the values to go out and create a more equitable society, whether it's here in Milwaukee or around the world. And then we're trying to impact social conditions. And so we're working in the schools and the neighborhoods around Marquette and countries around the world, so that all people can thrive. And some of the organizations that I've really admired, and now I might be blanking on the name, but there's a great restorative justice organization that does work both with law enforcement and public safety as well as in schools, and I believe it's called Sacred Blood, but I think I'm messing up the name. They're down on the far south side. And then I've also been really impressed with Jessica Dudley's organization in Chicago that seems to be working to convene, similar to what Safe and Sound does, law enforcement, the politicians, and the community organizers to say as a group, how do we increase our capacity? And I think that there's still obviously a lot more work to be done. And, it's gets at another question I see. I believe, Lynn, you're joining us from Los Angeles, and you're asking the question that's on a lot of people's minds. Not only how do we respond to the current events, but what should we learn from them? What do these atrocities teach us? And, I think that's a good question for each of the panelists to take a stab at. And then after that, we have a couple questions about the selections of Steinbeck and the music. So I don't know if maybe, Paul, you could start us off with what did we learn from this, and then we'll maybe do a lightning round.
Super quick on it, yeah. Also want to do a quick shout out to, not down here in Chicago, but about the same distance north, Harry M. Sidney, my brother's keeper. He's one of the organizations that the Lost Earth Trust partners with, and we've done events together. He's a former Green Bay Packer, and is using that notoriety and that connection to do great male mentoring in the Green Bay area and spreading out quite a ways beyond. So what we need to learn is empathy. Lately what I've been thinking, the last 11 days especially, have been so painful. I feel like a lot of us have a thinner membrane right now, and maybe that's not a bad thing. I'm thinking about times when I've been clinically depressed and it's been almost impossible to walk past a homeless person, whether I give him $1 or not, because I am feeling it so vividly and my heart is breaking. And it's not good to be clinically depressed, but I think it is a good thing to develop an empathy that no longer allows us to just keep moving. And so I want all of us to learn empathy and to be thinking in terms of, oh my God, how terrible for that person this happened to, for their family members, for their friends, to people who are terrified when they find themselves in similar situations. We have to step outside ourselves. Steinbeck said it. You don't turn inward. You turn to the people beside you, in front of you, behind you, below you, and lift them up.
I think people need to think about the fact that a lot of people will compartmentalize. They'll say, oh, it doesn't happen to me, so it doesn't affect me. And that is totally incorrect. What happens to other people affects all of us. And the way we can learn what other people are going through is by listening and educating ourselves on those stories.
Amen. Next.
I can jump in. I think what I'm really learning is that there is no going back to the status quo. I think the way that folks are reacting right now and what we're seeing is that, we're fed up to the point of the system has to change. And we've been needling around the edge of changing in our institutions and our mindsets for years. But I think right now there's a wide opinion that we just can't go back to that same function and fashion. There's going to have to be deep, significant change within these institutions for us to continue on the path forward, or else we're going to continue to see folks being angry, sad, frustrated, and protest until we get to that point.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree, Jamara. That's really what I was thinking. I remember 3 months ago when the NBA stopped the season and I was getting ready to go to the Bucks game, and I was like, what? How can the NBA not be playing? Like this stuff that seems so impossible. Like that's a kind of not a really super important example, but I use it because I think you're like, wait, what? They're not going to play, but they need to play. And so to me,
50 years since our first and only championship, it is important.
It's important, but what it said to me, and then everything kept going like that. Like, wait, they're emptying the jails, but a month ago they said everybody needed to be in jail, but now they only want 50% of those people in the jail. Wait, they're not putting people in for violations, but a month ago everybody needed to go in. It just like it laid bare how made up so much of the stuff that we are attached to is. And so I don't think it's even I hear what you're saying, Jomar, and I agree it needs to change, but the system's not even broken. It's built this way. It's functioning the way that it was built. We need to reimagine the society that we want to live in now. Like, it's an opportunity to say, hey, everything's laid bare. Let's create it. Let's put the blocks together and create it in the way that we want it to be. But let's also bring the Bucks back. let's let them play and win the championship this year. Come on.
It's leveling the playing field when everybody participates in a society that we all want to see.
Thank you.
Barbara pointing out Seeds of Peace out of Hawaii. I think it's great to see such a wide network of people chiming in here tonight. My computer is going a little slow, so I can't scroll down right away to these other individuals. And then I'll chime in with one last response to that question. And it's something I'm hearing from each of our panelists is people are echoing back to the great peacemakers. You know, it was Cesar Chavez who said to resist all things humiliating, that it's time to act. And, you know, it was certainly Dr. King who said that in the work that we should be doing, if we're doing it right, it should be building the beloved community. And what I'm hearing from others, and I know is at the core of peacemaking, and certainly from our friends at the Congregation of St. Joseph and some of the stuff Paul was mentioning, it's, you know, really identifying that we are one another's neighbors and brothers and sisters. And if we take seriously that, we truly will love one another and love our enemies. And I think, you know, that's what each of these organizations and each of you as artists are trying to remind us. I'm glad to see a number of colleagues from Marquette chiming in here, and like good academics, they want to know about selections of text and songs. So maybe, Paul, I think you were the primary crafter of the script. Can you share a little bit about what was the process to select the pieces of literature and the specific passages?
Okay.
This is in response to Jen Maney from the Center for Teaching and Learning at Marquette.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I mean, I knew from the start, almost 10 years ago when I started to put this together as a solo program, that when you do Steinbeck, it's going to be about empathy. It's going to be about social justice, inclusion, building the community. And I'm obviously Grapes of Wrath, obviously of Mice and Men, and then certain parts of Travels with Charlie are just so, the Deep South part is so social justice oriented, that's a no-brainer. And then to come to Cannery Row and say, okay, what is it? It's a little more subtle here, but when I read this and I see Henri the painter, this is someone who's so wrapped up in himself and his image that he is not able to extend himself for anyone and build a life and get in that boat and move forward. And so that was kind of a eureka moment. That's how I can use Cannery Row. And then East of Eden. It's a domestic situation and a multi-generational family situation, but it's driving home that same point where Brother's Keeper becomes very literal. And I mean, I had a connecting theme of this major element of Steinbeck that I wanted to bring out. And it came out more readily in some texts than in others, but it was there in everything. You'll find it in The Red Pony. You'll find it in Viva Zapata. You'll find it in everything of Steinbeck, I promise you. Because that's just who he was. And as for the songs, the Springsteen one was easy. I knew the song, and it gives us a chance to get Tom Joad's voice into the piece because he's not in the scene that we do. And you know, it's just such a wonderful speech that he gives to his mother when he's fleeing the police and has to separate from his family, and he never does return, at least not within the narrative. And then the other one, Cannery Row song, Delta 88 Nightmare. John is a friend, John Doe, and X is my favorite band, and that song just came out on the new album in a new version, punk rock version, about 300 beats per minute. We turned it into rockabilly, but it's about building beloved community. It's about, as I said, gentrification and displacement, and going back to the place where the good memories are founded, and finding that the people attached to them are gone because it's now a cute resort with dads and moms staring at us and making fun. But by the end, there's a discovery that you have to look a little closer maybe, but some of those same people are still there. And so there is still the opportunity of reconnection and community. It was a lot of fun curating it because I love Steinbeck, and those two songs were inspired by him. My wife Heather says, and she's right, next time we should fold in Woody Guthrie's Ballad of Tom Joad. It's kind of long because it summarizes the whole book, but maybe we could do it selectively. And the book is that thick.
Yeah. Well, I just want to extend my gratitude to you, Paul and Megan and Daryl, because it takes a lot of time both to curate this, select the text, practice it, and the three of you just did a dynamite job. I know we have folks on the East Coast where it's getting a little later, folks in Hawaii where maybe the sun hasn't set yet. And really, it means a lot, I think, to the organization to know how many people from all across the country are tuning in. One last question, and I might turn it to the community partner after I answer myself, is what crystallized hearing, the performance, hearing the songs and acted out? Was there anything about the performance that was either an aha moment or maybe a period of desolation or consolation for you that you're still thinking about? I'll begin answering that. And I just want to say that Elements did was just a reminder, and how we constantly have to be cultivating new experiences for people. Because I had, like Megan, read Steinbeck in high school. I think I dragged myself through it. A couple years ago, I happened to be in Monterey. I reread Cannery Row. But I have to say, the experience of hearing it aloud, seeing people, Daryl, your moving performance as Crooks, it humanized it in a new way, which just solidified for me that at the core of change is you can't tell people how to think, you have to give them new experiences. And that's what I'm taking away from the show, and I know the center is going to keep trying to do for young people in Milwaukee. But Terry, Jomar, would love to hear your opinions as we wrap up here.
I can jump in first then, Terry. I think one of the things that really crystallized from the performance was that whole idea of loneliness. And I'll tell a story just about during the pandemic, we switched to, we at Safe and Sound, we normally do door-to-door conversations with our residents. We're out in the neighborhoods talking with kids or residents, and that really had to change because of the pandemic. So we switched to, a lot of virtual conversations and a lot of analog, just picking up the phone and calling the residents that we have and checking on them. And we found that a lot of folks, during the stay-at-home orders and, just the COVID, that folks were really lonely. Folks they lost that sense of community during that time. And it just really crystallized with me as we were listening to this today, that importance of community, the importance of connectedness and being in the fabric of community, which, we've lost over these past several months through the pandemic. And, I think we've lost it as a community if you really think about, that connectedness between the races, connectedness about justice. So there's so many things that are creating loneliness within our society right now that we really need to get back to a sense of community. Or if we ever had a sense of community, how do we create a sense of community?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm so glad that you went first. So I was like, it was the loneliness. Daryl Allen's performance of the loneliness and the isolation was just like, oh, gut-wrenching, because it certainly has been such a profound experience right now. But then to connect it up with all of, historically how that has been created, that seems like the challenge, part of the challenge of our times. And wow, if we can overcome that, like really focus on how we connect with each other, for real connect, like it's weird because even though we did all of the in-person, it's almost like these kind of connections have allowed people to actually like bare their soul in different ways too, it was been really surprising, like, oh, if you're not sitting right next to me, you're able to give it all to me. So I think we're learning to be creative in our connections as well. So yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to invite each of the panelists to maybe, I know everyone else is probably clapping at home, but I just want to give a round of applause to Megan, Paul, and Daryl. You three did a fantastic job, and you, I think, stirred some curiosity. Jomar, Terry, both of you are on the front lines doing great work in Milwaukee. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Each of these organizations are small, we're nimble, we're collaborative, and we can't do it alone. And I know that when I look at the names on who are here tonight, I know all of you are intimately involved with the different organizations, and just want you to know that your support, your not only your financial support, but those kind words that were coming through on the chat tonight, that's what keeps us going, and we're just really grateful. And just like we were a year ago, we all remain committed to working to end racism and creating a more just and equitable society. So thank you, and thanks again to our performers. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Thanks,
Good
Daryl.
night.
Terry. Thanks, Joe.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Love you all.
I preached for the Lord a mighty long time, preached about the rich and the poor. Us working folks is all get together 'cause we ain't got a chance anymore. We ain't got a chance anymore. Now the deputies come and Tom and Casey run to the bridge where the water run down. But the vigilante thugs hit Casey with a club. They laid Preacher Casey on the ground, poor Casey. They laid Preacher Casey on the ground. Tom Joad, he grabbed that deputy's club, hit him over the head. Tom Joad took flight in the dark, rainy night, and a deputy and a preacher lying dead. Two men, a deputy and a preacher lying dead. Tom run back where his mother was asleep. He woke her up out of bed, and he kissed goodbye to the mother that he loved. Said what Preacher Casey said, Tom Joad, he said what Preacher Casey said. Everybody might be just one big soul, well, it looks that way to me. Everywhere that you look in the day or night, that's where I'm a-gonna be, Ma. That's where I'm a-gonna be. Wherever little children are hungry and cry, wherever people ain't free, wherever men are fighting for their rights, that's where I'm a-gonna be, Ma. That's where I'm a